Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. We are going to be talking about SharePoint communication sites, hub sites, and modernizing the SharePoint experience today. We're going to give it just another minute or two, let a few more folks join, and then we will get started. All right, well, I think we are going to go ahead and get started here. Dan, are you there as well? Want to make sure, do a quick sound check here before we get going.
Yeah, I'm certainly here. How you going?
Awesome. All right, well, hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are going to be talking about 5 tips on modernizing your SharePoint experience. We'll be talking about communication sites and hub sites today. This is a Pait Group and Hyperfish joint webinar, so you'll be hearing from me. I'm Stephanie Donahue with Pait Group, and also Dan Stoll is here from Hyperfish. You want to say hello, Dan?
Yep, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be.
Yeah, and you're down under today, is that correct? I'm broadcasting from the US and you are far, far away.
Certainly am. Yeah, I'm over in Australia at the moment, where it's a sunny 5 a.m. in the morning.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us so early. Quick
No problems.
background on Dan and myself. Dan, you want to go ahead and give everybody a quick background on who you are?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the VP of Product Technology at Hyperfish. Prior to that, I was at Nintex for quite a number of years, and prior to that, I've been working in the SharePoint space for way too long now, way back from the 2003 days, and then prior to that, Lotus Notes and all those other fun applications. So been in this space for a really long time, and really excited to see the direction that Office 365 is taking over especially the last sort of 12 to 18 months, with the more collaborative style tooling that we've got in Office 365. So it's really exciting to be still doing this thing after so many years.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? So I've also been doing SharePoint, gosh, I think I've been in it for maybe close to 10 years now. So Microsoft MVP now, and of course running Pait Group, and we have seen kind of the evolution of SharePoint and things coming around. And I've been in SharePoint kind of doing migrations and implementations for a number of years, and I love what I see with the new modern sites and the mobile access and everything that's coming. I think there's a lot of really good stuff here, and it's been a long time coming. So today we want to, yeah, that's right. Today we want to talk through, what is modern SharePoint, give you guys a really good background of what's there, kind of comparing it to what SharePoint's been in the past. And for those of you that are new to SharePoint, also give you some tips and tricks on what to do, what to look for, really how to kind of set up your environment in a way that you guys can grow and scale over time, and hopefully learn something today that you can take back to your own environment. So we are going to go ahead and get started. And please jump in and ask questions. If you guys have something specific that you jumped on today to find out, we definitely want to hear from you. We'll kind of stop as we have time as we go through the presentation and try to answer those questions for you.
Yep.
So tip number 1, know what you own. And this is something that, modern SharePoint is a little bit confusing because we have classic SharePoint as well. And I think there's a lot of kind of a learning curve for a lot of folks on what does that exactly mean to be modern SharePoint. So Dan, what does modern SharePoint mean to you? What's awesome about it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess modern SharePoint to me is, probably a lot more than what the next person thinks modern SharePoint is, because you've got, people talking about modern SharePoint in terms of just, the look and feel of SharePoint and, how it's hip and cool and it looks better than what the old SharePoint Classic is. And then, to me, that modern SharePoint is that ever evolving sort of line that SharePoint's taken with, you got Teams coming on now with Skype going away. You've got now hub sites and all these other, really cool features that are starting to come into the entire platform. And to me, that's SharePoint modernizing and, really bringing to the forefront, some of the things that, we see out in, the I guess the not the enterprise world, but in our personal lives around LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and all those kinds of things. And we're expecting those features now in SharePoint. And modern SharePoint to me is the combination of all of those things we see in our daily lives, in our personal lives, on all the sites that we see that move really fast, and bringing it back into that enterprise world. And yes, Microsoft's been trying to do that for a really long time. We had Yammer and we had social sites and stuff like that, but they were never really quite there. They were never really quite the features that we were wanting. And I think modern SharePoint is, it's really starting to move towards that, and it's evident with how fast Microsoft are actually moving with some of these features, I think.
Yeah, something you said there I think is really important in terms of the expectation for our everyday lives. Everything that we have in our laps right now, right? You've got your phone, you've got Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter. Every piece of marketing that lands in front of you is picture driven. You may not even
Yeah.
realize it, but everything has a picture and a description. And our old websites, our old intranets are very text driven. They were RSS feeds. And that's, the origins of SharePoint kind of started there. And so when you look at classic SharePoint now, you kind of go, ugh. It's something called visual rhetoric. It talks about how you feel when you look at something. And that old SharePoint was challenging for people and it felt clunky. And now we've got this really amazing platform that can support these nice high resolution images, but those it's more than just pretty pictures. It's about helping us understand what we're looking at, helping us understand what we're clicking on, and driving interest, because user adoption is one of those things we hear from everyone. Well, we have this really great tool but nobody uses it. So being able to draw people in with an attractive page is really, it's kind of a bigger deal than we give it credit for.
Yeah, and I think there's also inherently there's a bit of a problem there too, right? I mean, for me, I'm not much of a designer. I wouldn't know how to design a proper page, to save myself. So I'm kind of comfortable with that, the whole putting as much text on one page as possible because I want to see all the information. It's not about, putting a big picture on the screen for me. So I think there's one of those considerations too when you're moving to modern SharePoint is to, make sure you got someone in that team that, visually knows how to design a page. You've got some kind of a UX, not so much someone with UX experience, but someone who's just got a bit of an eye for detail. Whether it's someone into internal marketing, or you've got someone in the IT team or project team who does photography on the side, so they can go out and take some really nice photos around the business to increase that adoption. So there's nothing better than having photographs that are actually of people in the company or of rooms or of the buildings that you're actually working on and not using stock photograph as well. So there's a lot of those things you sort of start thinking about, making these things, visually appealing, because this is what it's all about. And, previously you didn't have to really think about that stuff.
Yeah, and I can relate because I'm not a designer. I joke that I can barely draw stick figures. So this kind of opportunity for me is really amazing. And kind of along those lines, even kind of knowing how to put the pieces and parts together can be challenging. I did include a link here at the bottom. It's the SharePoint Lookbook. And that is something that Microsoft has actually produced for us. And it's almost like a recipe book. Let me click here and come out because I want to show you guys how awesome this is. So Microsoft has provided this site to help us piece together what an intranet might look like. And all the time we always hear, gosh, I don't even know where to get started with my communication sites from my homepage. In this site, it's SharePointLookbook.azurewebsites.net. And if you click on one of these examples, it's going to take you in. It's going to give you an example of what a sample intranet homepage might look like. And if I scroll down, you see on the left-hand side, it will tell you what features have been used, what web parts are in there, so you kind of know what's available before you even start digging in and playing and putting your site together. And I love that it's like a recipe because you can kind of get in there, play around with it a little bit, and it's very easy to follow along and understand how to put that intranet homepage together. There are a couple things in here you'll see it says coming soon, like the custom logo and the stock information. So those are also an indicator, hey, don't go customize this, don't go build it, because we're going to release that pretty soon, and they don't give you exact time frames. So if you need it right away, you may have to go build something. But I love this idea because everybody needs kind of a starting spot. Even if this isn't exactly what you're going to be looking for, it gives you a really good place to kind of to start. And so you can get ideas, you can talk to others, and really start to build and put something together quickly.
Hey Steph, so we've just got a question here that's come through. And it's in a few different parts, so I'll just read it out for you. Are there situations where you're recommending that clients link their SPO sites to Office 365 group?
Okay, so, oh, I don't know if we lost you, Dan, you cut out there for a second. So yeah, so there's a very clear line right now on what you should link to an Office 365 group or team in that case. And today we're really focused on SharePoint communication sites. And the difference between a communication site template and a team site template is the fact that communication sites are really meant to be just SharePoint, just an intranet site. And that you don't have a long-term intention to collaborate. It's really more of a publishing tool. So think of SharePoint communication sites as you're publishing, as your, maybe a few contributors and many readers. Think about things like HR. They publish benefits, 401k information, healthcare, things like that. And you're publishing corporate communications, news, announcements, maybe a corporate calendar, things that are really just for everyone. When you get into linking a SharePoint site to a group or a Microsoft team, that's really where you're looking at a SharePoint team site template instead. And so you can either create a team, which creates SharePoint on the backside, or you can start and have a SharePoint site first. We call it like groupify or teamify it, meaning you're extending it into the teams or groups interface. And that's meant for more collaboration. So the two templates are slightly different, and they have two very different purposes. We're not going to deep dive on architecture today, but I think that's a great question. So the communication sites, again, publishing sites, that's where your focus is.
Yeah, and I guess just looking at the question a little bit deeper. So one of the things he's asking is, since SharePoint calendars are only available in classic pages, would you recommend they use Office 365 group calendars instead of SharePoint calendars?
Um, so you do have, you can still, so this is kind of leading into, I don't want to get into it yet because we are going to get into this here in a little bit with
Cool.
migrations and what that looks like to combine classic and modern pages. So let's hold on that particular question and we'll talk about how you can kind of use the best of both worlds there. Does that sound good?
Cool, cool. Yes,
All
sounds
right.
good to me.
I know we need to keep moving here on our slides. So, all right. So we will come back to that, I promise. All right, so tip number 2, work from anywhere. So the other nice thing about your communication site templates is that they are mobile friendly out of the box. So you don't have to do any custom branding or custom builds to be able to load a SharePoint communication site on your mobile device. And then, what's interesting is that we had a kind of a white paper, I guess, that we found that said 48% of surveyed employees wish that their workplace technology performed the same way as their personal tech, which I think, Dan, you mentioned earlier too.
Mm.
Even if you're not big on the mobile experience and you think, nobody here will use it, definitely consider the next generation, the people that are coming out of school right now. They're coming out of college. They've had phones, they've had laptops virtually their entire lives, and they're already doing. My son, he was at home updating his Weebly website from his phone the other day, and I was just floored. So understand there's kind of a different mindset. There are a lot of people coming into the workforce that may also need this mobile experience. So mobile being really, really big and important. It's also important to know what's possible and what's reasonable to do from a mobile phone. Any thoughts
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that, Dan, before I switch
yeah.
over?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also, good to really set expectations in terms of that user adoption and ensuring that you've got good sort of training in place internally. So when people do use the mobile apps, they are expecting, what you actually presenting, because some things just don't work in mobile, and things are different in the mobile experience. From when you log into the mobile app, you don't get the homepage with the weather and all the fun things that you might have on there. You get the news. So it's really about setting those expectations of the users, so when they do open it for the first time, they aren't let down and then never use it again. But if the expectations have been set, the people that really want to use it and know how to use it and want to use it will use it.
I think the SharePoint app, think of the SharePoint app as your news source, right? If you have a news app on your phone, that's kind of how the SharePoint app is going to operate. I'm going to close out here and I can show you guys just a real quick demo just to show you what that looks like. Because I think it's super important to understand that if, it's from an expectation standpoint, if you have this mobile device, you'll see at the bottom, you have news, you have find, and you have me. So this is your default page. When you open it up, you're going to have a news option. And if I go to find, then that's going to give me the capability. You'll see I have my quick access and my frequent sites. If I go into more sites, I can get to the sites that I want to get to. So you can get to your documents, you can get to your list, you can get to your other information, but you're going to take a couple clicks to get into that stuff. So I think sometimes the expectation is we're going to open this app, we're going to get our home page, it's going to be mobile friendly, and we're going to run from there. And that's not what this is meant to do. It's meant to be more functional, and it's meant to highlight news, because 90% of the time, that's really all you want to pull from your device anyway. You're probably not standing in line waiting for a hamburger and filling out like a capital expenditure request, right? So important to, just like Dan said, keep in mind what you think you would actually use on your phone, because this is probably right in line. Microsoft has gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of folks, and the news is really where it's at when it comes to mobile. For collab, Teams is a whole nother discussion. Teams is great on mobile as well, so I don't want to take away from that. Just know that that's kind of the focus here for this particular application. All right. Oh, we got a couple questions coming in here too. Let's see. I'm going to leave the migration question to the next slide that we're going to talk about. Okay. All right, so let's hop back over. Dan, any other thoughts on mobile?
No, no, mobile's just one of those funky things that the people that love it, and the people that don't love it, don't love it.
Well, they can
And
use their desktop, right?
they can use their desktop, yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think a lot of it comes down to that personal preference as well, and what information you're really after. And there's a lot of third-party tools out there within the SharePoint ecosystem that also provide, mobile interfaces to give you the forms and all those other things, whether it be Power Apps or whatnot. There's multiple ways to to skin that cat in terms of being able to interface with SharePoint in a mobile experience.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to move on into the migration here because I think that's where a lot of the questions are coming in. So maybe we can spend a little time in this space as we talk through some examples here and how to deal
Yeah.
with migration and the changes. And there's some very specific questions coming into to the chat here. So I want to address some of those as we go through this. But modernizing is happening for everyone. So even if you've already been on SharePoint Online, you may be in the Classic site right now, which means we've got to kind of upgrade and change our pages from Classic into Modern, which is actually possible. You don't have to delete your Classic sites and recreate them. It's not that bad. There's a script you can run. We can actually send a link out for that, but there's a modernization script you can run in your environment, and it will tell you, number one, it'll give you a report, but number two, it will also do that update for you if you're feeling brave to let that happen automatically, so that you can switch over from the Classic experience to the Modern. And so what a lot of our customers are doing, though, as opposed to doing all of that quickly and automatically with a script, they're just kind of switching things over as they get to them. Because their Classic pages still have some functionality that it doesn't exist yet in Modern. So kind of that phased process of maybe spinning up some new Modern sites and using those in conjunction with Classic sites, or using Modern pages even if you're still in a Classic site. We're seeing a lot of that kind of hybrid scenario happening right now. So let's see, what do we have in terms of questions? So a lot of publishing sites. So this user has a lot of publishing sites with custom page layouts. So when you migrate the Classic sites to SharePoint Online, what's kind of the process for that? So, gosh, where to start with this? Dan, do you have any thoughts up front, or should I dig into kind of the differences between a publishing site and Classic and what communication sites bring in Modern?
Knock yourself out. The last time I
All
did a
right.
migration was 2003 to 2010.
I actually have, let's see, I think I pulled this way up that might help us talk through that process. So when you talk publishing sites in SharePoint Online in the Classic, what you have is a highly customizable page, right? So in Classic SharePoint, you could kind of do whatever you wanted to do. And you could brand, you could add images, you could kind of really make it look really nice. And you didn't really have the limits, right? You could update your master page, you can update the CSS and really have a really attractive site. The challenge is, as we move into SharePoint Online in the cloud, you constantly have updates rolling out that put at risk your branding. If something changes, your branding could break. And the other challenge is that our Classic home pages, unless you built the mobile responsive design in, it's not going to be mobile friendly. So it's a lot of additional work in the Classic publishing page to get that to look mobile friendly. So what's happened is now with the new Modern communication sites, we are transitioning to this place where rather than using master pages and CSS, we're using something called site designs. And I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here, try to help you guys see that better. Oop, let me try that again. It's not zooming in very well for me. Oh, it's not going to behave. I think it's the screen share. So sorry if that's a little bit zoomed out. But you'll see that this is the same concept. But it may look a little more plain. We hear a lot of comments about it being more white space. And you've got the hero web part is kind of taking place of your slider. You also have their slider web parts that you can have within a Modern site. You'll see web parts out of the box for video, so you don't have to build those individually now. The news roll-ups, those are all kind of out of the box. Across different sites even, you can roll them up into the homepage. So really, it's a pretty good experience in terms of being able to get some of the things you want without having to build them from scratch. But the downside is when you do want a customization, and that is like these application quick links. I think they've even built these in now. This used to be custom, but I think you can do this now out of the box too. If you do want something custom, it has to be built in the SharePoint framework. So you're no longer doing client-side code. You're not able to manipulate a master page. You're really working within the context of a custom web part. And that SharePoint framework is what's going to give you the ability to have a custom header, a custom footer, the ability to have a custom web part, and that's going to be the big change for you. So if you're moving from a publishing site into SharePoint Online, you're probably looking at rebuilding your page layouts, best case scenario. Unfortunately, there's not a very easy transition, but you can get something that looks relatively similar to what you had if that's what you're going for. It's just going to be a completely different approach. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to that question, but hopefully that answers things. And for those that are looking, I see there's also a navigation question. The communication site does not give you the left nav. There are different page layouts, modern page layouts that you can use, and some of them do have the left side nav. One of those is the modern team site page layout. That'll give you the left navigation if that's something you're looking for. To just you'll just want to check out the page layouts and determine what you want to set as your home page. Okay. Hopefully that. Any thoughts on that, Dan? Do we have other questions in here? Looks like we've got a bunch of stuff coming in.
No, you're totally right. No, I was just answering a couple of questions in the answer window. We're all good.
Okay. Did you want to address anything that you said you're answering a couple things before we kind of keep moving?
No, there's just a couple of thoughts around, mobile actually, in terms of, when and when not to use mobile, in terms of, mobile isn't the answer to everything, and, utilizing mobile for intranet sites is kind of crazy because you can't get that full experience. And, it's one of those things where desktop is better. But then you've also got those experiences for, say, field workers that do need to have offline experiences, and they do need to be able to get information into systems, short, quick and sharp, from the field. They need to be able to utilize the mobile capabilities such as barcode scanning and things along those lines. Those are where mobile really comes to the forefront in terms of usability for enterprise workers. It's not really a case of having mobile users browsing the intranet and checking the weather and the news. Yes, it's there. Should you encourage it? Maybe not. They're all very personal choices. But mobile, for me especially, is super important for particular use cases and job roles within an organization. So there was a couple of questions around that, so I
Yeah,
answered that.
and I definitely agree. I think they kind of refer to it as business apps now. So your Power Apps and Microsoft Flow, Power Apps really being the key. I think there was a comment in here too asking about Power Apps being utilized. That that is a great way to access SharePoint content and surface it in a mobile app and have a very focused experience, whether you're filling out a form or you're just surfacing information. You can use search-based web parts to surface particular content you think in terms of work instructions. If the SharePoint app is not what you're looking for or OneDrive isn't getting you what you need, look at Power Apps as an option to surface your SharePoint content through a Power App as a mobile application on your device. We're starting to see that pop up as a really powerful tool, especially for those in the field. You're looking, like I said, work instructions for folks like on the manufacturing plant floor, really powerful stuff. And Power Apps has come a really long way since the beginning. If you tried it early on and you were frustrated, try it again, because it's a really robust experience now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So a couple other notes along those lines too with forms and workflow. If you are migrating into SharePoint Online and some of your SharePoint sites have InfoPath forms, you have SharePoint Designer, maybe that SharePoint Designer approval workflow is part of your publishing process for the intranet. You can migrate with a third-party tool, those InfoPath forms and SharePoint Designer workflows into SharePoint Online. They will function, they'll run. You may need to do some tweaks to update your URLs and things like that that are part of your notifications. But by and large, they will come over and they'll work just fine. you will find that you'll need to run within the context of a classic site experience in order to have your info path functionality and to be able to access your designer workflow and things like that. So just kind of that is one transition point that we see with our customers, is that that is something, if you're rolling out in phases, get your intranet published and move everything else over as is, and then kind of come back to those forms and workflows over time, because the rebuild process for moving an info path into Power Apps, moving designer workflows into Flow, definitely a rebuild process, much like your publishing sites into communication sites. It is a decent amount of rework from that perspective. Okay. All right. Do we have any other questions to hit along there?
There's so many questions coming through.
Oh
I'm
my
just
gosh, they are. This is great. You guys are awesome. I know
I'm just
we've got
no, but
15 minutes here to get through the last couple. So
that's all right. So if I go silent, you know that I'm just sort of tucking away in these questions.
feverishly answering questions. Awesome. Okay. And so I'm going to keep going on this, and then at the end, if we've got time to circle back around and ask some of these, because I do want to stay on topic, but there's some really great questions in here on forms and workflow. So Dan will hit what he can, and we'll circle back at the end to answer whatever you guys need. Okay. All right, so tip number 4, we want to talk a little bit about updating your user profiles. And if you're wondering what that has to do with modern SharePoint, it's actually user profiles are one of the foundational pieces of Office 365. So in traditional SharePoint, legacy SharePoint, you may have noticed that user profile imports happen, and that is what drives your people search in SharePoint. That is still absolutely the case in your SharePoint Online and Office 365 environment. However, you may also notice that it follows you around. So that people card is in Outlook. It's in Skype if you're still running Skype. It's in Teams. It's in SharePoint. So it follows you everywhere. And so all of that information is fed from your Azure Active Directory. If you're not updating it, you really need to look at that. We had a global manufacturing firm go live, and they had not updated their user profiles, and they had an executive do a people search from their brand new intranet homepage, and that executive was not listed as an executive because they had been with the company for many years. And I don't know if he was an intern necessarily, but he certainly wasn't listed as a VP or a C-level as he should have been. Wasn't very happy with that. So it kind of came back to IT and said, look, we got to get these profiles updated. So something to think about as you're rolling out your environment, even if you're thinking, we're just doing the intranet right now, we're just going to do communication sites, this stuff is visible right away. So you want to look for that. You want to make sure your profiles are updated. And it's also pretty important because it's driving a lot of your search, even not just people search, but knowing who you've been connected with and surfacing relevant search results, because it's more than just a keyword search. It uses something called the Microsoft Graph on the backside, and Graph is learning from you. It knows what meetings you've had, it knows who you work with, it knows who you're connected to in the org chart, and it's going to surface documents in search based on what it thinks you want returned. And if all that information is up to date, you're going to have a lot better search experience. It's one of the first things our users ask for. Search needs to be better. I can't find anything. So definitely consider that. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about org
Yeah,
charts?
yeah, sure. So I guess one of the main reasons why I guess I'm here as well is around the Hyperfish product, and it's one of the things that the Pait group uses to sort of address some of these AD issues when moving forward into Office 365. And it's a common scenario that we see all the time, where people are migrating over to Office 365, they turn it on, and bang, all of a sudden, all of that Active Directory information that hasn't been updated for years is now surfaced in all the platform, whether it be in the profile cards within Outlook, whether it's in using the SharePoint search, whether it's opening up Skype for Business and someone clicking on the name and stuff's missing, whether it be, their job title or their department or their photo, all that kind of stuff, right? And that's where we sort of sit in and do that for you, where we directory and then goes and looks for missing and incorrect information based on the rules that you set, and goes out and prompts the users to update their information via email. And then they update that information. The information gets stored back into Active Directory. If you're in a hybrid scenario that's utilizing AD Connect to synchronize that information back to Azure AD, all of that information, pushes from Active Directory on-premise up to Azure AD. We also connect to SharePoint Online profiles, so you can have custom attributes sitting out in your Office 365 profiles, or custom attributes in AD to collect information that's not part of the out-of-the-box profile system set, whether it be what type of employee you are, whether you're full-time, contractor, part-time, what languages you might speak, and things along those lines. And we can facilitate that collection of information. And then obviously once all that information is back into Active Directory, it's going to give you that better collaborative experience within Office 365, not just in SharePoint, but also in Teams, and also in Skype, and also in Outlook and Word and PowerPoint, all the places that you see profile information for users within your organization. And that's one of those really nice things. And when you're off the conferences and you're seeing all the Contoso demos and how wonderful they look, and you go, why doesn't my intranet look like this, and why doesn't my Skype for Business look like this when I'm doing it? It's because they've spent hours, populating all of those profiles with pictures and skills and what schools they went to and all those kinds of fun things. Now, we provide that tool to allow end users to update that information. But not just a case of, yes, users can go and do that now, but they've got to be proactive, and they've got to go to their profile within SharePoint, and they've got to request a change made to Active Directory via the help desk. So we try to pull all that together into a single area, and to then prompt the actual users to say that they're missing something that's been deemed required, such as a mobile phone number or a department. So that's where we kind of sit. And then once you've got that information, you can then do things with it. So if I just steal the presentation here for a second, let me just wander through here. And where are we? If I change presenters and share my screen out, let's show my screen. So I've just got an Office 365 page here. It's a modern page, and I'm just utilizing the Hyperfish org chart. Now, one of the things that you don't get out of the box with Office 365 is a full-blown org chart. So yes, you do have org charting in pretty much all of the platform within Office 365, but it's very pertinent to the actual user that you've selected, or it's based on yourself. You don't see the peers, you don't see the big full tree of the organization. So one of the things, we've got a number of different web parts that pull and display the information that we're collecting around users, is the org chart. So here, for example, I've got the org chart set up with the CEO at the top of the food chain. You can change that to be, say, Gina here, who's the CFO, or it could be Sanjay, the CIO. And if I scroll in, I can see, let's scroll out, and we're going to get pictures over, and I can hover over and see. So if you've got a very large organization, you can get a bigger picture. And if I go in, I can click on Sanjay, and it's going to bring me through to the other ones here, and I can keep going through to Jeff, and so forth, so on and so forth. And you can see, how many people are actually direct reporting into these particular users with these icons. So it just brings that more rich sort of environment to the users, so they can find out where people are within the organization. And if I want to find out more information about Jeff and some of the things that we've collected on Jeff, I can select on his profile card, and this will bring up his full details, whether it be his, what skills and languages he speaks, or what offices is he located in. And I can click through and do all that kind of fun stuff as well. So that's kind of what we do, and it's really to facilitate this modern thought of SharePoint that user-centric intranets, and making sure that people know where people are. We're all in very global organizations now that we need to be able to find out who that person is in the office in Paris, or we need to be able to work with that person in Hong Kong. And being able to go into the intranet and find that person and see their photo and see what interests them, see what languages they speak, can better prepare me for that meeting that I'm going to have with them tomorrow, or whatever it needs to be. So yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a couple questions here around that. There is an org chart sort of in 365. They only ever show you a very small piece of it. So it might be me and then the three people that report to me, or me and maybe my boss and like one other person. So you're only getting out of the box in 365, you're only getting a very small snapshot of that org chart versus Hyperfish, which is kind of showing you that bigger picture. So that's one piece. If you're looking to how do I sync my information, most folks are using Azure AD Sync. That takes your on-premises your on-premises AD information and moves it into Azure AD. We're also
Yeah, and
seeing,
I think I was
oh,
going to say, so I think it's called AD Connect now. It used to be
AD Connect,
AD
sorry,
Sync, I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
Thanks. Yep, they change the terminology on you on a regular basis just to make sure you're paying attention. Um, but
Exactly.
then, so that's the main way to get your info in. But the other way, we are also seeing imports. If you export from an HR system and then import back into AD through PowerShell or something like that, then we're also seeing that as being a way. But something like Hyperfish, they also have bot technology. It can go out and ask you a question and populate your user profile that way. And then a fourth option might just be going out and editing your user profile in Delve. So if you wanted to see what your user profile contains now, Delve is a great place to go check that out. So you have a ton of options to get there. It's a matter of how automated you want that process to be. Okay. I think we caught most of the questions there on that one. I'm going to go to the next slide here. We'll circle back to the others. But one other thought before I move on to the last tip here, all of this user profile stuff and the graph and learning from you, it really leads back into that idea of an intelligent intranet. And you hear all of this stuff on AI and having it learn from you and producing relevant results is awesome. But as we get into this, like, what's coming in the future, what's next? You've got an intranet and a system in 365 that's going to learn about you. It's going to understand how you work. And then as it comes to, okay, we're just human and sometimes we forget to tag and sometimes we put things in the wrong place, and the ability to be able to surface relevant information becomes so much more a reality when we've got all of this working on the background kind of on our behalf. So as you start to see Azure bots come into the picture and some of that automation in the background, it's really going to be a big deal. May not be something that you interact with right away with your intranet and your communication sites, but just know that that's kind of what's coming next. All right, so kind of getting to the last tip here, we did want to touch on this because this is also a concern as folks start to roll out their intranet site. Everybody wants to make sure if we're moving our information to the cloud, is it protected? How do I make sure that we don't lose any important relevant information, our intellectual property from our organization? So think of Office 365 as being that umbrella. I know there's a lot there to it, but if you start, maybe you have Trello, you could replace it with Planner. You have Dropbox, replace it with OneDrive. If you have Slack, replace it with Teams. So now you have control over that data. I had a customer tell me that he didn't think they needed to roll out OneDrive right away, and then come to find out, because they had so many restrictions locking down the size of the attachment in Exchange, that they had more than 80 rogue Dropbox accounts. And Dropbox reached out to him and said, hey, you need to go get an enterprise Dropbox account because you've got all these accounts and you've got all this intellectual property floating around that you don't have control over. So if you You know, if you think that you've got things under control, but you're not providing a solution, I guarantee you people will work around you. They will try to find other ways of doing things. I thought Dan Holm had this, if you don't know who he is, he does a lot of the speaking at the SharePoint events like Microsoft Ignite and SharePoint Conference, and he heads things up over there on the SharePoint side over at Microsoft. You know, he works for Jeff Teeper, and he mentioned that if you think you're shutting down external sharing by turning off external sharing in Teams, turning off external sharing in SharePoint, just remember that you've got email and you've got attachments and you have external sharing through that. And if you turn it off, right, then they'll go to the internet and they'll find another way, right? You literally have to turn off the internet to prevent people from sharing externally. So why not put it all in an environment where you have control over it? And by no means are they saying be reckless. Come in, do your planning, know the security that Office 365 provides to you with mobile device management and your enterprise mobility and security suite, your E5. There's a lot of stuff in there. So just, you know, think about pulling it all in under that umbrella and being able to control it and learning about the features like information rights management, threat protection, and all those awesome things that are available
Mm.
so that you do
Yeah.
have control and you do have that ability to kind of have that prevention of what could happen. Don't be afraid of the cloud because it can actually help you. Dan, any thoughts?
I mean, security is one of those massive minefields, right? Where you could spend a lot of time on security, and there's a lot of great functionality in Office 365, especially with the E5 suite now. And the other third-party products, and depending on how far you want to take it, whether you're having to implement a full-blown records management system, or do you just need to ensure that your data is kept safe inside of your Office 365 environment? They're all very pertinent questions that you really need to address and know the answers to before you get started. So when you do your migration, or when you do your build out of your sites, you're planning its security, at the start, not as an afterthought.
And it may even come down to the little things, right? It might seem overwhelming at first, but if you're rolling out in phases, just kind of take it one instance at a time. Do we need to prevent the ability to print from this library? Do we need to prevent download? Do we need to make sure if someone can download it, that they can't download and then forward to someone else through email? You know, rights management, even if you download that document from SharePoint and you attach it to an email, somebody else attempts to open that document, it has a wrapper on it. And if you go to launch that document and open it, it's going to prompt for a login. So there are things you can do to protect, finance documents, HR documents, research and development. You know, there are extra layers of security that if you kind of take it case by case that you can add. And that's in addition to already having encryption at rest, encryption in motion, meaning if I download that document and open it at my desk, it's encrypted in the process of opening it, it's encrypted in the process of saving it back. So those are all things that you have in place to kind of help you with that protection while you're utilizing the cloud. You can prevent if I access from my home device, maybe I set up a policy so that I can't actually download any documents to my own personal device. It has to be a domain joined machine. So there's a ton of options there available. It's just a matter of sitting down, doing the planning, and making sure that you're setting that up in advance.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I think that was our last tip there. So, Dan, I don't know how many
Yeah,
of the
a lot of
questions you
information.
got through. If
I
we want
got,
to
I got,
circle
I
back
got
around.
through. Yeah, I got through a few. There might be a few that we might have to send out emails to, I think.
Okay. And we're trying to keep things to 45 minutes today. So, all right. Do we have any remaining questions here? Take a look. All right. All right. Well, Dan, it sounds like you've got the list, so we can always circle back around and answer things as they come up. And
Yep.
put up the last slide here. We'll wrap up. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully you learned something today about modern communication sites, modern SharePoint, and some tips and tricks on making sure that you're setting things up the right way, and trying to keep in mind how to modernize and scale over time, and to do that in phases so that you are not overwhelmed as you roll this out. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. We appreciate you coming in, and hopefully we will hear from you guys again soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone.